Filmmaker Oliver Stone and historian Peter Kuznick are promoting the release of their new series, Untold History of the United States, which premieres on Blu-ray and DVD. I sat down with both of them to talk about how events in American history may give us insight into recent news about NSA surveillance, drones, and Wall Street greed. And Oliver Stone explained to me why he feels like a dissident against the U.S. empire. Oliver, Peter, thanks for sitting down with me. The news over the last few months is focused on the NSA, it's focused on drone warfare, American militarism, and poor economics here at home. That news has sort of ripped off the veneer of the U.S. government. How do you rectify the way the U.S. government is acting today with the vision that you've had and that Americans have of the way the government should be acting?
I don't. I think our government has a shadow government that has existed now and grown stronger in the 70 years since World War II. I think we get into that very heavily in our series, The Untold History, but it's out of control. Hoover was out of control during the Vietnam War, and also prior to that in the Civil Rights Movement and his monitoring of communists since 1919. I mean, basically our battle with enemies began around the Wilson time when we went into World War I, but after World War I, we went after the communists. That was much more important to Hoover than any gangsters or corruption in our unions and mafias, and he didn't care about that. He cared about communism. That was somehow the deadly enemy for him. That would disrupt the American way of life.
On this issue of Hoover, it's pretty well known that when he was head of the FBI, Hoover had dirt on pretty much everyone, from members of Congress to members of the media, everyone. And some have argued that he had blackmail power over essentially everyone because of this. Given what we know about the NSA, spying on everyone, not just for national security reasons, but also for diplomatic reasons, economic reasons, has the NSA become the new FBI?
The NSA makes the FBI look like amateurs, just like the NSA makes the Stasi, these German secret police, look like amateurs. The Stasi's motto was to know everything about everybody. They couldn't do it. They were bumblers. But you look at the NSA, they really now have the capability to know everything about everybody. And they're doing that. The fact that they've got all this information and it's stored and they can tap it whenever they want means that any kind of political freedom in this country is very, very tenuous. This is not the way democracy operates.
It gives our executive and police branch, our security branch, enormous power because we don't know what they have, and fear as a result. This conversation, every conversation is in the end, can be monitored, and that's to say, it's not listened to at the time. It's millions and billions of conversations, but we fear that in the future, with also increasing technology, they'll go back and they'll ferret out every little last word if necessary, and every conversation. So everything is on the table. There is no privacy. It is terrifying as a concept.
In your series, you praise Henry Wallace. He's the very progressive former vice president of Franklin Roosevelt. And he wrote an op-ed in 1944 in the New York Times on American fascism. And I want to read you a quote he said. "If we define an American fascist as one who, in cases of conflict, puts money and power ahead of human beings, then there are undoubtedly several million fascists in the United States. There are probably several 100,000 if we narrow the definition to include only those who in their search for money and power are ruthless and deceitful." What do you make of that definition? And given the American government's obsession with wealth creation, do we have an American fascism problem?
Wallace said that explicitly at one point. In 1942, he says America's fascists are those people who think Wall Street comes first and the American people second. Today we call them Democrats and Republicans, right? This is the heart of both parties, which is why there's so little difference between them. That's why if you take a long view of American foreign policy, more so than domestic policy, there's very little difference between the Democrats and Republicans. Militarism and corporatism together. That's what runs this country.
But aren't all these things, from drones to surveillance to even austerity economics, don't they all come down to a problem of American empire? I mean, we're trying to surveil the entire world. We have drones patrolling skies across the Middle East to deal with blowback of U.S. intervention all across the world, from the Middle East to Africa to Asia. How long can this sustain itself, and how do you make the case to the American people that empire itself is a disease.
It's so difficult to make our case because people cannot understand that if you're on top, it's not necessarily the right thing. We are in this privileged position. Oil, economics, we are on top of the world. And we kind of feel uneasy a little bit. We know something's wrong, but we don't really want to know too much. Think about it. And I was in the Soviet Union in the 1980s, in 1983. Right, I was doing a script on dissidents because I was curious. I was seeing 10, 15 people that were actually had been in psychiatric hospitals. They were under surveillance. They were back in the cities, trying to meet me at midnight in subway stations, strange places, and I felt this country is falling apart. The system clearly does not work. Gorbachev saw that. Economically, there was no incentives to work. There was no compassion between people. It was dead, completely dead. I didn't know it was the end. I was shocked that it ended so quickly after that. But I think that now, at that moment in time, I felt by instinct that the United States, because we were polar opposites, was going to go through the same thing as they were going through. And when you look at our economy, you wonder between the gap between the rich and the poor, the sense of deadness, the average life, that there is not much possibility anymore beyond a certain sphere. You can get to a certain place. You stay inside your sphere. You can't get beyond that. And above all, the sense of spending this much money on empire, which is the military economy of the Soviet Union was absorbing like 40 to 50%. Our economy is absorbing, our military intelligence is absorbing 40% of our expenditure, our real expenditure. Think about the parallels. I feel, Peter doesn't realize it yet, like a bit of a dissident in this world, a dissident against the American empire. And I thank God I'm not in a psychiatric hospital, and we have freedom of speech so far. But, you know, we can be ignored. And we are being ignored by media, mainstream media. We can't even get on national public radio anymore.
But the good thing is that there's an alternative world out there, an alternative media, and that media appreciates what we're doing. We've done a lot of right-wing shows, and we do a lot of progressive shows, and people aren't only taking their information from the usual sources.
Well, most people do. Most people do. I'm sorry, they do. That's where the numbers are. I think something's going to happen. The curve of the ball can break differently. History has shown us that. I think something is going to happen. I just feel it before I go. So it's going to be within the rest of my lifetime.
And you don't know when it's going to happen. They had no idea what set off Arab Spring. A Tunisian street vendor was humiliated one time too many, set himself ablaze, and the Middle East exploded. And the United States can be the same.
Oliver, Peter, thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Sam. Good luck being a dissident.